There's scanning, and then there's bulk scanning, and bulk scanning is when you're converting large quantities of records into a digital format. Typically, this refers to paper scanning, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're not talking about microfilm or aperture cards or those types of materials. We're specifically talking about paper scanning and doing large quantities of it. When we talk about bulk scanning, we're talking about, again, paper. Let's say we're using banker's boxes. We're talking about multiple hundreds or thousands or even potentially up to tens of thousands of boxes of paper. So you're not thinking this isn't 5 boxes here, 20, 50 banker's boxes there. This is hundreds, like 5, 6, 800, 1,500, 3,000 boxes. Large quantities of paper that you need to get scanned to a digital format. And the resources required for bulk scanning are much larger than when you have those smaller projects. So of course you're gonna need the document scanners, the actual machines that you use to convert that paper into a digital format. You need to have lots of machines to accomplish a successful bulk scanning project. Otherwise it's gonna take an extremely long amount of time to do it. Imagine if you have 1 or 2 scanners and operators, people that are doing the scanning, and you have 3,000 boxes. That will take a very long time. You want something like 4, 8, 10 scanners working on these projects so you can get it moving so it finishes in a timely fashion. It doesn't just take forever to do it. If you've ever gone through prep for a scanning project, you know that it's hard to continually go through those pages. So rubber fingertips help. It's almost like wetting your finger when you're reading a newspaper or something. Just going through that paper makes it easier. You need tape to fix tears and rips and things of that sort. And then of course you need the scanning software. So the machines, the people that do the work, and then the software to actually process the images once they're scanned. The bulk scanning process is very similar to any other paper scanning process. So that'll be pretty consistent across small, medium, and large projects, which includes the prep, so getting the documents actually ready to go through a scanner. Then there's the scanning itself, converting those records from an analog to a digital format. You have post-scan processing such as QA, quality assurance, quality checks of the actual digital images, and potentially OCR, which is optical character recognition, basically creating text searchable files so you can locate key information from those records later on. Indexing is going to be a big component of bulk scanning process because you have such large amounts of data, you want to be able to find it properly. So indexing is going to be crucial. Then there's the actual delivery of the images. So that might be on encrypted hard drives, might be on an FTP, file transfer protocol, basically an electronic transfer of the files. Or it may be something like loading into an application such as our digital reel hosted solution, or maybe something that you have on your end that you want to format the images so it goes into a current document management system within your organization. And then lastly is going to be the document return or potentially disposal. So let's say it's that 1,500 box job. We're either going to return it to you and you're gonna either destroy it yourself, maybe put it in long-term storage, or just put it back wherever it came from in your offices, or you might want it destroyed once you know that you have all the images, the project's complete, and you want secure destruction. So those are the typical delivery options at the end of the project. Some of the challenges and solutions to those challenges when you have such large amounts of data are the varying sizes and types of the records. So if you have a small project like 20 boxes, the project can go pretty quickly either way. There's not a lot of material to go through, so it's pretty easy to parse it out and take care of different sizes or types of materials. What I mean by that is you might have office-sized documents and oversized, like engineering drawings or something like that. And those can be either separated, maybe of all your let's say it's a building department. You have all your permits in banker's boxes, and then you have all your plans and drawings rolled up separately. Or they may all be in banker's boxes, and you have the drawings folded up and intermixed with those smaller documents. So those varying types and sizes, especially blown up over larger projects and the bulk projects, that makes it more difficult. So that's a challenge because you're constantly adjusting the types of work, the type of prep you're doing, and then you have to use different scanners for those types of materials. So the solution to that is to utilize scanners that can handle various sizes. So for the smaller documents, maybe you have your standard office size documents, 8.5 by 11, but then you also have maybe 11 by 17s mixed in. So you want scanners that accommodate both. But then you might also have envelopes, like just smaller envelopes, or sticky notes attached, or receipts, or little things mixed in there. You want to have a scanner, a machine that can handle those types of materials. And if you have oversized drawings mixed in, you need to have machines and the process flow to be able to accommodate doing those on separate machines, but keeping those records together. So being able to handle various types is critical to a project like this. Another challenge is the document preparation time, or we just call prep. Prep is a beast. Almost every project, it's not necessarily a scanning project, we call them prep and indexing projects, because the prep of getting the materials even ready to go through a scanner takes the lion's share of time in most cases. So if you're thinking a single box, let's say it takes for instance, 3.5 hours to scan, probably 2.5 hours of that is going to be just getting the materials ready to even go through the scanner. So the prep is a major component of paper scanning projects. And then when you extrapolate that against multiple hundreds or thousands of boxes, you can understand how it is just a major component and a challenge for large projects to continue that process, keep these projects moving, but taking so many boxes and applying all those hours of prep. It's a major component. A solution to that is something that you can actually do before you work with a company to do the scanning, and actually do a little bit of prep before the company picks it up or you send it to us. So there's not as much prep when it gets to, let's say we're working with you, so there's not much prep when it gets to us. We're more focused on scanning. We're always gonna have to do some prep even if you do it, because we gotta make sure that you didn't miss something, because we're the ones that are trusting that we're gonna put these into our scanners. There's a staple miss, rubber bands, whatever, that can jam and really mess up the scanners. So we have to do some prep to verify that it's ready to go. But if you do some prep up front, it reduces the prep we have to do and that you'd be charged for as part of that project. So again, with these large major projects, let's say that you're planning to take records off the shelves, put them into boxes and then send them to us. While you're getting them off the shelves, you can do a little bit of prep just to make it that much easier for us. So there's lighter prep when we get it. We can get more into the scanning and processing the images to get back to you. When you have hundreds of thousands or multiple millions of images, image quality consistency can be an issue. Usually when you have these bulk document scanning projects, it's because you have years or decades of materials, and those older records can be poorer quality. They can be just aged out because they've been sitting in storage for so long, or maybe you just have records that are not good quality either way for whatever reason. Maybe they've been stored not in a great place, or they got water damage or moisture damage or something like that. And when we scan them, it's just the quality is not that great. So legibility can be less than optimal on some of these images across larger projects. You're gonna have variations in quality when you have such large projects. A solution to that is making sure the company you work with is implementing a quality control process to flag images that may not be that great and potentially scan them in a different setting. So sometimes an image is what it is. That's how the record is. That's how the original is. There's not much you can do with it. But you may have something like onion skin paper where if it's just scanned in a different setting, it can actually make it more legible. So when we run into things like this during projects that we're working on, sometimes we'll separate those out and scan them at different settings to make sure that they are as optimal as possible when you get them. It's not always really feasible to do that when you're having large projects like this. You're trying to get it through in a workflow, a process flow style environment. But if we come across, let's say, a certain year or a number of boxes or a certain type of documents, we know they're going to include these not fantastic original records, we can potentially manipulate the scanners, calibrate them a little differently to try to work with them to get them as optimal as we can. Another challenge is the large quantity of data that you're going to receive once the project's done. If you have 2,000 boxes, that's a lot of records that you're going to have to get as a digital receivable. So handling and storing that data may not be something you're thinking about. You're just like, well, I want to get digital, so just get it back to me. But you have to realize that that could be hundreds of gigabytes or terabytes of data that you're going to receive. So do you have the resources to keep them on your network or your storage platform so you can access them and actually utilize them? And a solution to that could be working with someone that does have that capability, so you don't have to worry about purchasing servers, purchasing storage, and taking care of all that. Maybe just work with a company to host it on a cloud solution. Again, going back to something we do is we have our digital real secure solution, secure hosting, that if you work with us and you don't have the capacity or you're maybe looking for options, we can host that for you so you can still access the records and utilize them while you're doing something on your end. Accurate indexing and organization of bulk document scanning projects is critical, and it's essential that you keep that in mind as a potential challenge, because when some clients go into projects, they want to get very fancy, very cute with indexing because, well, it's digital, let's go crazy with it. But what we like to recommend is replicate what you do now. Keep it simple. Use a building block approach with your indexing, meaning if you have boxes of records with file folders within them, let's say they're student records and there's a student per folder, start with that. Keep the indexing simple. That's how you find it now. You're replicating what you have because you can always do more later. So when you have these vast quantities of data and you're indexing them, if you start changing how the records are named or located compared to how they were in a physical format, it could cause issues because one, your folks won't be familiar with how they are indexed once they're in the new indexing format compared to what they were. but also you're manipulating the original historical context of the record, and that can potentially cause issues. Not saying it will, it's not guaranteed that it will, but you just should think, I can always do more indexing later, I can always make it more granular or change it up later, but we typically recommend keeping it simple, replicating what you have now. So the main goal is just going from analog to digital, but keeping that indexing, keeping that way you find the records the same, and then you can adjust it later if you need to. That's our solution for that challenge, because you don't want to spend a bunch of money up front and then realize that wasn't worth it, or wow, this is really complicated, now we need to go back and fix something. So a recommendation is to replicate what you have now, and if you need to later, you can always do more indexing. Data security is always a challenge with any scanning project, but especially bulk scanning projects, because of just the amount of data involved, the number of records that are being handled both physically and digitally. So the solution to that is just doing your research and finding a company that has a history of protecting records and the security around it, and making sure that you're verifying that the physical security of your records, how the transportation is going to go, how they receive them, how they store them and handle them while they're in their facilities, while they're in their control, the company you're working with, and also the digital security. So once it's scanned, how are the records protected? A way to do that and verify is to ask for any audit reports or ask for certifications or guidelines that the company complies with. But audits are probably one of the simplest ways to do that, because they can provide a report, either an internal audit or a third-party audit like a SOC 2. So check the security of your vendor, check for their longevity, references, other projects similar to yours, because it's not just physical or digital, it's the whole ecosystem of security of protecting your records, and that just incredible amount of data. When you have hundreds of thousands of boxes, you could have tens of millions of records. You want to make sure they're protected throughout the entirety of the project. And lastly, always a challenge with large projects is the cost. And just because of the amount of data being scanned, the physical part of the prepping and scanning, and then the indexing, depending on how detailed you want to go, it's just going to be a high price project, most likely because of the amount of records involved. There's no way to really get around that. You'll probably get lower unit pricing. So again, let's say you have 2,000 boxes, the per box or per record price will likely be lower than a 20 box project, but the gross price will of course be larger because you have 2,000 boxes compared to 20. But you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So it's a large project, you're gonna have to spend some money on it, but just find ways to reduce your costs. So that's your overview of a bulk document scanning project, some challenges, some solutions to those challenges. And like I mentioned before, you could check out this video to see a number of ways to reduce your costs when you do decide to move forward with a scanning project, specifically paper scanning. If you click the link in the comments below, you can reach out to us and contact us about your scanning job. We'll see how we can work together, and thank you for watching.